we roamed around the cemetery, and then around like town, and we were like thought we were all like badass because of that or something. It was like exciting because we skipped school, and then the next day at school we didn't get busted because we thought we were gonna get busted. That was like part of the excitement. And another thing that we weren't allowed to do is at that school was leave campus at lunch. The only reason I could leave campus because I had an off-campus pass because I lived like 1 block, 2 blocks from school. But I think they even revoked that, and so kids basically weren't allowed to leave campus. So if you left campus, like girls for some reason love to play the cop, and this goes way back to the beginning of time, man. Like if you turn around and you try to cheat off of a girl, they're always like, no. Like girls are the perfect fucking society conformists. They'll conform to the rules of society and enforce that shit. Because like if anybody tries to leave campus, you know some girl's gonna be like, you leaving campus? I saw him trying to leave campus. And so yeah, you basically were gonna get busted because some girl was gonna see you. But and were getting busted all the time and having to have like detention and stuff. And I snuck off campus a couple times with some friends, and we never got busted. But it was definitely something you had to be really careful about because the year before, some kid named what was that kid's name? He was 1 year older than me. McCarty, Chance McCarty. Got hit by a car and was in a coma for like 3 weeks and almost died. And because he was off campus. And so they made it so kids couldn't leave campus that year after that. And so yeah, we had to hang out on the school campus. So anyways, those are the only kids who I remember hanging out with, 7th grade. I didn't hang out with anybody. But like, I mean, and then like in 7th, and then like in 8th grade, halfway through 8th grade, we moved to like northern part of Boulder. So I wasn't close to school anymore. We ended up, I'd ride my bike to school, but sometimes I'd take the bus. And I think maybe even most of the time I take the bus, which in retrospect sounds completely insane. Like, why not just ride your bike? I guess I just didn't have the energy. Because I remember I didn't have energy. 8th grade was just as bad as 7th grade. Because I remember walking to the bus stop after school every day and being like, because the teachers, or maybe the students too, but the whole vibration, the whole energy of school back then was a vibration of, it was a reality, a mindset of like, this is the only life you're ever going to live. Like very limiting. And so I'd be walking to the bus stop and like, as soon as I leave the vortex of the school, I'd be like, there must be something beyond this. Because I grew up being Buddhist, there must be, I was even like forgetting there was such thing as reincarnation. I was getting so hypnotized by the reality of that place. I'd be like, there must be other lives. There must be angels. It can't be all this. This can't be the only reality we'll ever experience. We have to be more than this. It tripped me out. It totally freaked me out. And, yeah. But, I think I started hanging out with some more kids in 8th grade, though. That's when I made friends with Mike Chapin. He's like one of my best friends these days. But, I made friends with him because he was in this, he was in theater class, and that was a fun class because we partook in a theatrical production that I was the lead for. I was this guy who dressed up like a girl, trying to pretend like he was a girl for some reason. Yeah. But, so I started being friends with him. And then, so he kind of introduced me to some of the kids he was hanging out with. Like, he called it Ronnie Earhart and those guys. Not like Ronnie Earhart was like popular or anything, but it was like Ronnie Earhart and like Cale Russell, Doug Jones, Mark Palmer. And so I kind of hung out with them for a little bit at lunch. And then Mark Palmer's like, let's go, let's take a hike. So like I'd walk around campus with Mark Palmer. So he kind of became my friend for a while in 8th grade. And but then and then in 9th grade I started hanging out with Dew again. Dew started being my friend again. He was hanging out with a kid named Dan Tonelli, who was in my choir class. Who was actually, I think he was a year younger, a year below us. But hung out with them. And we didn't really hang out with Mike Chapin that much, though, because I remember we'd go in and Mike Chapin would be out there, like, eating his lunch, out of his bagged lunch. And we'd be like, hey, man, you want to come and hang out with us out there? And he'd be like, what? No, man, I'm reading this book. And I remember Mike Chapin had this, like, he liked to repeat this thing a lot. He was like, Lewis Carroll was on acid when he wrote Alice in Wonderland, man. Lewis Carroll was, and you know what? Jimi Hendrix wore those bandanas on his forehead because he was on acid every time he played guitar, man. I was like, oh, really? Okay. Yeah, nobody knows that, but it's true, or something like that. Yeah. And there was this other kid who people made fun of named Doug Boyd. He was like 2 years older than us because he had a big head. He had some kind of problem that was going to actually end his life when he hit 65 or something. And he gave a presentation on our school about it. But yeah. I remember in 7th grade, before I even knew who any of these kids were, some girl, maybe it was, I don't remember who it was, but she de-pantsed Shannon Jones. So I remember I looked over and saw her underwear, and she's like started screaming, like terrified and crying and stuff. And then in the 9th grade, I saw these other 2 kids who were like best friends, Cale Russell and Jake Opdahl, fighting. They were fist fighting in the hallway, but they were fighting like girls. It was really funny. And then I saw them like hanging out with each other the next day. So yeah. But I wasn't on any of the sports. I was on track and field in 7th grade because that was before I got diagnosed with that knee problem. And I was the second fastest kid in the track meets at our school. The fastest kid at our school was Cedric Hustvedt. And he won. He was the fastest kid in the whole district. I think we went as far as district championships, and I got 4th. He won, and I got 4th. And he raced the Red Zinger, but he didn't do that well. He only raced in 85, and I kicked his ass. But he was like this like outgoing kid, like blonde dude, and kind of independent-minded. But he was only there in 7th grade. But he didn't seem athletic. He didn't seem like he cared about athletes at all. But he did the mile, and he fucking kicked ass. He was like bigger than me. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But yeah, I didn't do track in 8th and 9th grade. I think Mike Chapin did because he talked about it. But I didn't do it because I had the knee problem. But I ran a 5:40 mile, I remember, in 7th grade. I don't know what Cedric did it in, but I ran a 5:40 mile. And Pete Vordenberg ran a 4:40 mile. I remember it was exactly 1 minute faster than me. He was in 9th grade, and he was in my ski team. He went to the Olympics twice. I think he was state champion, too, in high school. That's what Mike Chapin said, I think, but I wasn't on the team then. But that was the only school team I ever did. Our school teams were like basketball and football, but I never tried out for it because I wasn't like social at all. And I didn't even understand the rules, and nor did I care. I just, like, my philosophy with school was as soon as school got out, I was going home. I didn't want to have anything to do with that place, and I wasn't even going to do. I was going to do like absolute minimal homework too. That was my policy all through school. Do absolute minimal homework. It was like a way to wash it out of my system. Yeah. So, I mean, I think if I had dropped out of school, I would end up being more studious, and I would have ended up reading more books because I would have felt more responsibility for it. but especially when it came to math. Science, I mean, I did all the homework. I turned it in on time, and I did everything, and I did study for the test as much as I could, but I didn't go overboard. I just do it all until I felt like I knew all of it, but I wouldn't go over it again. You know, I wasn't like a perfectionist. So like in the multiple choice science type of tests, I'd usually get like an 88, like a B plus, or an A. But I remember I had physics class, 9th grade physics class, with this dude named Mr. Walker, who is actually our chaperone for this time. A bunch of us went down to see Disney World, or we paid extra for it, but we did a tour of Disney World. But this guy, Mr. Walker, man, and he was a pretty good teacher too, man. He was a good teacher. But he did something really fucking weird. I had a B plus in his class, and I got an A in the final exam, right? So then it become time at the very last day, they were going to tell you what your grade was, final grade for the class. And he gives me my grade, and I got a C for the class. And so I walk up to him, you know, and I'm patiently standing in line. And I go up to him and I go, yeah, I need to talk to you. He goes, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm busy. Get away. And I'm like, no, but seriously, I don't ever ask you for anything. You know, this is for real. I got to talk to you about something. He's like, get out of here. I'm like, dude, no, I'm going to talk to you about something. He's like, what? And I go, dude, I had a B plus in the class, and then I got an A in the final. And I showed him my A because I still had the paper. I go, see, look, A. And then I showed him how I had a B plus. Like I think I even had proof. I had like, look, this is my pre-final grade, B plus. And so here's my grade where the final class is a C. And I remember him looking at it and having this like look of defeat. And so then he changed my grade to like a B. And he just gave it back to me and didn't say anything. So I think he did that on purpose. I think he needed to give like C's to a certain amount of kids to like keep up the quota. And I mentioned this to like an ex-college professor a couple of years ago about that kind of stuff, and he said he didn't know anything about that. But so maybe teachers just don't like kids for some reason, but he did that. And another thing happened to me once too. I was in like choir, Mrs. Doran or Mrs. Rollins, and I showed up every day. I sung perfectly. I did everything. And all the kids in my class, all the boys got A's, but I got a B. I was the only kid who got a B. But and the weird thing about it was that a lot of kids like interrupted her a lot and would say stuff that had nothing to do with school, and like she'd have to like discipline them or whatever. And I was never one of the kids who had to do that. So yeah, I'm just something about my vibe. I think I'm like spaced out. Like I don't pay attention a lot. I'm always like this. And teachers see me doing that, and it like pisses them off. It makes them feel like they're not doing a good job or something. So they want to like get revenge on me by giving me a bad grade. Because they did that in college too. I had a college class, and I didn't call these ladies on it, but they gave me my grade and stuff, and they go, yeah, here's your grade. We don't know what it is yet, but it's going to be a B. It's not going to be lower than a B. So I'm like, all right. So then I get my thing in my grade in the paper, in the mail, and it's a C. So they decided to change their grade also. And also in education department, I got a D minus in the final paper, and he didn't tell me I got a D minus until 2 years afterwards. But because of that, and the reason I got a D minus was because he said like one of my chapters was the wrong title. It should have been a title of another chapter. But this guy wasn't even a writer. He was like a computer programmer he had a PhD, so he got a job in the education department. But because of that, they kicked me out of the whole education department. Didn't let me do my student teaching and get my teacher license because of that. So yeah, teachers, man. I'm not ever going to take a class again because teachers, they're out to get me, dude. It's real. It's not paranoia. It's fucking real. But anyways, who was another teacher we had? Mr. Runnels. Mr. Runnels. He was our geography teacher. And he was also our government teacher.